Welcome to Who We Are and What We Need. I'm your host, Quiring. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and an advocate for needs-honoring, needs-based society. In this podcast, we talk about how to trust and care for yourself as a person who cares and feels deeply, how to understand the inner physics of human nature and our place in the world where we can flow and live harmoniously, how to support each other, thrive, and collectively challenge worldviews and systems that feed off of and perpetuate harm. In this podcast, we gently blow away the layers of noise, chaos, and reactivity so we can get to who we truly are and what we need. Thanks for joining me. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to Who We Are and What We Need. I'm your host, Quiring, and today I have with me the lovely Lindsey Lockett.
Hello.
And hi. I was trying to remember how I initially found Lindsey, and it was somehow on the internet, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
and
Instagram.
Just on Instagram, probably, yeah, and loved everything she was posting. And I was actually on Lindsey's podcast September of 23, and enjoyed that so much. And then now that I have my own podcast, she came up on my mind and I was like, oh, I have to have Lindsey on the podcast. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you and have you on my podcast, Lindsey. And I'd love it if you could introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, well, hi again. It's good to be on your show. So my name is Lindsey Lockett. I call myself a trauma educator and a nervous system coach, but I kind of feel like that title is evolving a little bit. I don't feel like it fully encompasses everything that I do. So until I land on something, we'll just go with that. I'm the host of a holistic trauma healing podcast. I come from a background of broken family, fundamentalist, evangelical Christian upbringing with a whole lot of trauma related to that, which we talked about on my podcast. And yeah, I have deconstructed and deconverted from evangelicalism and have a lot of big T trauma, have a lot of little T trauma. I have complex PTSD. I am extremely neurodivergent. And I think that my number one value in my life is authenticity. And it's like embodying my own authenticity and also welcoming and celebrating others' authenticity. And so that's why I say that the like trauma coach, nervous system coach title doesn't really fit anymore, because for me, ultimately the point of all of my work is like, we're doing this so we can be our authentic selves.
It's like, right. It's almost like an authenticity coach, but that doesn't feel quite right either. So yeah.
Yeah. So I recently started a new Instagram account called the Authenticity Witch.
I love that.
So yeah. I mean, I'm not planning for that account to like replace the account I have. I'm not really pivoting in my business, I would say. But I just wanted a space to really just dedicate to authenticity and all the different stories and challenges and roadblocks and beliefs that we have about authenticity. And that really, like, the whole point of regulating your nervous system, the whole point of like unpacking your trauma and healing to create a coherent narrative, the whole point of living in awareness and curiosity, like the whole point of all of it is so that you can be your most authentic self in this world.
Right,
and then, authenticity, it works by resonance. So people either love it or they hate it. But when you're your full authentic self, you're just putting out the vibe and you're going to repel some people, right? Like you're not for everybody, but you're also going to attract the people that you are for and who are for you. And so it's a value of mine. I equate living authentically with living in integrity. So those two are like really woven together for me. And I work as a coach. I do one-on-one coaching. In the last 6 months, I've gotten into couples coaching, which has been really fun. Like really, really fun. I actually have, I don't think I have one one-on-one client right now and the rest are couples. So pretty interesting. And yeah, I teach live workshops. I teach a lot about the nervous system. I have a workshop coming up that's going to be an experiential workshop about trust falls. And so I've got a lot going on. So we can talk about whatever, Catherine.
Yeah, sounds good. Well,
something that was pinging for me was even when you were talking about the living in your authentic self, and like it feels like I don't know, maybe like unburdening from this having to mold or fit in or people please or fawn or whatever that is, right? That you're like letting that burden or that heavy coat or that heavy blanket go. And not only are you able to be yourself, but there's some healing facet of self-expression in that, right? That I need to be able to express myself and live out of my true self, right?
Yep.
And put that out into the world.
Yep.
And then that brings either resonance or reaction,
Yeah.
right? And I'm
Yep.
curious, in some ways, how that journey has been for you. Like, the like pieces of that, if there were ever like movements to that, I guess, in a sense, right?
Yeah. I would say that like my authenticity has been challenged, squashed, minimized, and forced to adapt like since birth, probably.
Right, right,
Only in the last year. I mean, I haven't been formally evaluated, although I've tried to be formally evaluated, but finding a psychiatrist who will evaluate me for autism and
right,
ADHD, it's
right.
literally like an 18-month waiting period. Like, and I've
Yeah,
called like 5 different places and they're like, it's minimum 12 months, 18 months. Like, so I've taken like the RADS test and all of that online
hmm,
and I
hmm.
score on the spectrum or on the, I don't even know
Yeah,
what it is anymore. I
right.
don't think it's
Then I
the
would say you
wheel or
are. Like,
yeah.
yeah, that I went through the exact same process and I was like, so I feel like this is an autistic response to this of like some of these tests I'm not quite above it. So, but I resonate with everything I hear about autism from women with autism.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what does that mean? And so I finally came down on the side of, yes, I am ADHD, so autistic
Yeah.
and
Yep.
ADHD.
Same.
But
Same.
it took such a long process in doing so much research and all of the tests.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't think a neurotypical person would do that.
Did you, I don't know, I'm curious if you had the like the feeling as you were starting to explore the idea of yourself possibly being autistic, did you meet a lot of resistance in yourself like I don't want to take a label that doesn't
Right.
belong to
Oh,
me, or
absolutely.
I
It
don't want to
was
use this label and to
exactly
get attention, or
right.
I
Right. It
went
was
through
like
that
I
whole
really wanted to be as honoring to the community as I could and as honest and authentic and integrity as I could, right?
yeah.
Um, And there's a lot of people that were just like, if you feel like you're in, you're in. And I'm like, I don't know if that's good enough. You know?
Isn't that so interesting how we like gaslight ourselves out of
I
our own
know. I
experiences?
know. And there's all sorts of different facets of it, right? So like there's when you add in the ADHD, it's different. There's also the high sensitivity bits of facet of it. And there's I'm such a high empath, which is a non-stereotypical form. So that's why like I don't show up on all of the tests, but on all the like checklists that neurodivergent folks have made, I score super high.
Yeah.
But on the formal assessments, I don't. And
Oh, see, I
so
even score high on the
on the
formal
formal.
assessment.
So
Yeah.
I mean, just for my own opinion, I'm gonna say yes, you are.
Yeah. Thanks.
Like
Thanks.
go for it.
I
But
feel
I'll
validated.
send you some stuff. I ended up getting a self-diagnosis consultation, and
Mm,
I now offer them too. But it was from someone, Rainbow Counseling, who has like a variety of things, but there are certain states, and I can't remember if your state's in her list or not, but we can, or their list, and we can look it up. But
yeah. I'm in Minnesota, so I would love to look
yeah, I'm
that
trying
up
to remember.
because yeah, I'm just like, do I really want to wait 18 months to get evaluated for
Yeah.
something is that's
Mm.
probably going to be a yes, like
Well, and if
if
people
I
are not neuroaffirming or aware, they might just be like, well, you don't really present as
I
autistic.
don't.
So,
Yeah, and I don't present as autistic.
right.
Although, here's what I'll say, Catherine, to go back to the authenticity thing. I think that I am more autistic now than I've ever been in my life.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
And
Same
my
here.
husband and I have been
Hmm.
discussing this over the last year. And I'm like, I thought that the further along I got in my healing journey, air quotes around that phrase, the further along I
Hmm.
got, the less I would display some of these tendencies. Cause like in your head, it's like, if I'm healing, that means I'm doing less of
Right.
whatever the things were that I was doing before that
Yep.
were like maladaptive or whatever. And the truth is the more I heal, the more autistic I am. And
Yep.
it's coming out like in so many different ways. Like all of my friends now are very much on board of like, yep, Lindsey's autistic. It's kind of become a joke in my circle. It's like a way to, it's not, they don't tease me with it, but it's like, yep, there it is, you know, kind of. And so back to my authenticity and like that being challenged and squashed and forced to modify for my whole life. Like, I think the big fat question right now in this space that's like the intersection of complex PTSD, like ADHD, autism, like there's an intersection there.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a chicken or the egg situation for me. It's
Right.
like, what came first? Was I born neurodivergent? And so maybe my parents didn't know how to attune to a neurodivergent child, or maybe they didn't understand that. Like that wasn't even a word in their vocabulary, right? So was I more likely to experience complex trauma because I was born neurodivergent? Is that why I have complex PTSD and ADHD? Or did I have all of this complex trauma? And then the way that my brain and nervous system adapted to that presents in a neurodivergent way. Like, I don't know which one came first. I don't know if I care which one came first, but the trifecta of like ADHD, complex PTSD, and autism is like definitely me. And then on top of all of that, I don't know if you've looked into this yet or if you experience any of this, but I have this other kind of, it's not really a trifecta because it's more than three things, but I can't think of the word. But it's like, I have this neurodivergence. I'm also on the hypermobility spectrum.
Yeah.
I also have mast cell and histamine issues.
Yeah.
And I also struggle with like proprioception, like where my body is in space. I run into walls a lot. I like when my husband and I are walking down a sidewalk, I'm like walking into him and like pushing him off the sidewalk, and I'm not doing it on purpose. Right. So I have all these other things that also support the fact that I'm probably autistic.
But, because there's so much correlation between all
and
of those.
have you looked into RCCX theory at all?
No.
You should look into RCCX theory. It's like a very interesting genetic explanation for the co-occurrence of all of these different things.
Oh, great. Yeah, because I've been on a hunt for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had some DNA testing done back in 2017. I did it for nutrition. So I went through a naturopath who specializes in nutrigenomics. And I took my raw data from 23andMe. I sent it through this online system called Prometheus, which spit out a report that I paid $5 for. And then I sent that report to this naturopath. And then a few weeks later, we had a virtual call and she explained it to me and she gave me the report as a PDF. So I learned from that report that I have a lot of cytochrome P450 mutations. So there's CYP is the abbreviation. So it's CYP pathways. And these are enzymes that are made by the liver that are responsible. Part of their responsibility is that they metabolize and break down like 70% of pharmaceuticals and herbs. And for my whole life, I have always had strange reactions to pharmaceuticals and herbs. Like I've been prescribed painkillers that provided no pain relief for me. And that also didn't make me loopy and didn't make me sleepy. I've been like, I have reactions every time I have to have anesthesia at the dentist. I have a reaction to it, not like an anaphylactic reaction, but like a really uncomfortable reaction. I've just had so many instances of like these weird, like drugs don't work the way they're supposed to. Like I can't take SSRIs because all SSRIs are processed primarily down the CYP2D6 pathway. That's my most mutated pathway. So I'm learning all of this about CYP stuff. And then I hear about RCCX theory. And guess what RCCX theory is based in? It's based in a specific CYP pathway.
Wow.
And it's not one of the CYP pathways that's on my report. But I have all these other CYP mutations. I'm like, what are the odds? You know what I mean? So kind of piecing that together. But I think that my story when it comes to like my authenticity, if I had to sum it down to one sentence, it would be, I'm too much.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm too
Right.
much.
Yep. Yep.
And that was like confirmed to me all throughout my childhood. After I married my husband, my mom actually, when I first got married, I didn't understand boundaries. And so I was still like venting to my mom when my husband would piss me off, which I learned pretty quickly. Don't do that.
Which is like, feels like a legacy of evangelical life.
Yeah,
I just want to
totally.
say that like that.
Well, I was evangelical when I got married, right?
Exactly.
Right.
I was like, oh, that feels really common. Okay. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. So, like I would vent to my mom. I'd be like, David did this and David said that or whatever. And I am not even kidding, Catherine. Like her response would be, you really should go easy on him. He's the only one who will put up with you.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, I didn't
It
get any
felt
red
normal.
flags. It
Right.
just felt normal because I think that was the subliminal message of my mother my
Right.
whole life is like, you're just too
Yeah.
much. You're too much. You're too
Yeah.
much to handle. So then I find this like amazing, patient, kind, spacious, generous man who is like, I'm not putting up with you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I love you. But then my mom is like, he's the only one who'll put up with you, which just reinforces the like, you're so much
Yep.
that this one man is the only man on this planet who can put up with you. So you better like keep a lid on it, was kind of the energy. And it just reinforced that I'm too much narrative. And
Right.
so all throughout school, all throughout high school, all throughout my 20s, like being in the church, I didn't do a very good job of being the like gentle, quiet Proverbs 31 woman. Like I tried really, really hard and I always felt a lot of guilt and shame because I knew I wasn't living up to that. But I now know that that was never going to be authentic for me. And that was just a box that I was trying to contort myself to fit inside of because anything other than gentle, quiet, submissive Proverbs 31 woman is too much. Right.
And rebellious.
So, yeah. So there, I think that has been the whole reason that I have squashed my own authenticity and have shown up inauthentically. And I also think that that's what was happening within the church and within my family of origin is that my authenticity was too much. So it was like, you need to tone it down.
Right.
I recently, like 2 months ago, had a rupture with one of my closest friends. And it was all around him being like, you're just so intense sometimes. It's a lot. And I was just like, felt sorry for myself for a bit, wanted to get really defensive, kind of wanted to be like, well, if I'm too much, go find less, like kind of wanted to do that. But then we made it into a repair space where I was just basically like, I do know that I'm a lot. I know that I can be really intense. Like I feel intensely. I communicate intensely. I know that I can be really intense. But all I've ever heard about my intensity is how bad it is. And what I want you, my friend, to know is that for all the ways that my intensity bothers you, I also intensely show up for you. And I intensely love you and your family and your child. And I intensely will like defend you if ever needed. I will intensely speak up for you and have. And like, you don't get that level of intensity that benefits you without the other level of intensity that maybe you find too much.
Yeah.
So am I still too much for you?
Right.
So yeah, it's been such a journey of, and I've been in this space even recently of like, I would say the only way that I know how to like visually and physically describe what it's like for me sometimes with authenticity and taking up space versus like not wanting to take up so much space that other people can't be authentic, is I often feel like I'm walking this emotional tightrope and I'm like, like balancing and like trying not to fall. Cause it's like, I don't want to fall too much over into the like, I'm authentic and I'll do whatever I want. And I don't care what you say, which I don't think is authentic at all. I think it's ego.
Right.
Like, I don't want to get too much over there, but I also don't want to get too much in the space of like, oh, I won't take up space. You just do whatever. And I'm just going to like let you. And right. So it's like, I'm playing with right now, trying to transition out of this like tightrope energy instead of seeing it as a binary, because that's another thing my autistic brain likes to do is see everything as black and white. So I'm trying to get out of the binary of like, there's these two options that I'm constantly trying to balance in between.
Right.
And look at it more like a web where it's like, I have these threads of my authentic self, but I also have threads of myself that allow others to take up space. And the web isn't something you have to balance on, right? It's just something that holds you or it catches you.
Yes. It's like a hammock.
Yeah. It's like a hammock. So I don't know. I mean, that's a new thing that I'm playing with, like just in the last month, is like shifting out of this tightrope energy that feels very small and constrictive and sort of like, oh, I might be doing something wrong. Oop, maybe I'm not. Oop, I'm myself. Oop, nope, now I'm not. And the oop is like, I live in Minnesota. So that's a very, oop is a Minnesota thing. So, so yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. That was amazing. Okay. I know for myself, I've had very distinct feelings of like, I am going to take up lots of space in my internal world and like heal that and make that like such a gorgeous, amazing place to be. And then there was the shift to like, well, if I do that, those parts of me need more expression in the outside world and they need to take up more space with other people. And then that I'm still in that part of the journey and the challenge. And that's been a whole nother thing because then you get everybody else's responses to you. Right. And like, okay, I remember very clearly being in a time that felt like a tightrope too, right? Of like, I'm like neutral. I'm trying to be neutral to myself and to them. And I'm not in that anymore. But yeah, it is such a journey to like, how do I take up space in this world authentically? And especially as a neurodivergent person, that like the way other people interact with you might be like kind from their perspective, but it does not feel kind to you or understanding, or you don't feel seen. And how do you like take up space where you feel seen and react to that? And like, there's so much complexity there, I think. Yeah, I've definitely had periods where it's like, I'm not abandoning myself anymore, right? Like, no matter what this looks like. And that's part of the like, I'm going to take up space in this world because I'm not going to abandon myself. And I was thinking when you were talking about being too much, the question that I've had come up for me is like, what's so bad or so wrong about me being me? Right? Like, why are all these people having these reactions to this? Like, this shouldn't be that big of a deal for me to just be me. Like, that shouldn't be asking this much, kind of thing.
No, it's not.
So, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
But it is to some people for whatever reason.
Is. I know.
And I just wonder sometimes if it's like sometimes I wonder if my misunderstanding or confusion about or inability to read social cues. I wonder sometimes if like, because I'm not taking in that information in the same way everyone else is taking in that information, that means that I'm not adjusting and modifying myself based on the social cue that everyone else is getting, that they're perceiving in their own way, because I'm probably perceiving it differently. And a lot of, and I don't know if this is autism or if this is complex trauma or if this is just how I authentically am, but I kind of naturally lead with like trusting people and giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And I kind of have this innocent, naive sort of way that I approach a lot of.
That's very common with
people,
autism.
is it?
Which is part of what makes me think it's not just trauma.
Right.
Because there's this innocence and playfulness and beauty and old soul and like fierceness about justice and authenticity that is very neurodivergent. And that isn't necessarily true just with trauma.
Right. Okay. Thank you for saying that, because
you're welcome.
I do feel sometimes like when I'm not reading this, because it depends, right? if I'm in a close attachment relationship with someone, then I will often misread their social cues and read a threat into it that isn't there. And that's my trauma, right? Like that hypervigilance and that negative noticing, that's my trauma.
Right.
But around other people that I don't have that with, I don't read their social cues as meaning something automatically negative.
Right. Yep.
And so then I approach them with more as my authentic self, who's very open and bubbly and intense and like, who's like, oh, you want to talk about feelings? Let's talk about feelings. You know, like my husband follows this kid on Instagram. I mean, I say he's a kid, he's probably in his 20s. He's this British guy. I can't even think of his name, but he is so obsessed with trains. Like he's autistic and he says he knows he's autistic, and he like goes to different train stations around Great Britain. And he takes videos of when the trains are coming and he gets all excited. He jumps up and down. He screams. He can tell you the year that engine was built, the make and model of that engine, the company that built it. Like understanding people and their emotions is my trains.
Yep. That's exactly. And that's what happens a lot with the non-stereotypical autism in women, is that it's more like interests that blend in societally more. Right. So that's been mine too. It's like,
what's yours?
Sociology, psychology, spirituality. Yeah. Feelings, like the who we are and what we need, like better, like more compassionate view of human nature, like any of those things, decolonizing, like, so social justice-y, feeling oriented soul space kind of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you think that that's because you felt so misunderstood your whole life that you've sought out a train that helps you understand yourself and other people better?
I think it's both that, and I'm such a strong empath that like I have been feeling everyone else's feelings and nervous system around me my whole life. And so I think in some ways it was a search to understand that. And that's like my natural language in a sense, or like this other sense that I've been focused on or looking for information about. But it's less just information and more experiencing. So it's like I want to experience things that allow me to incorporate that sense. Right. So being a therapist, like that's what I do very well in one-on-one sessions, especially like I can really feel into it with people. And it's just so beautiful. But like groups, it's much harder for me personally.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting.
I know. So I have a book recommendation for you.
Okay.
It's called A Field Guide to Earthlings by Ian Ford, and I'll send you the information. But it really helped me understand. It's his take on neurotypical mindset, ways of thinking, motivation, and that like we just don't get those cues because that's not important to us and it doesn't make sense to us. It's like this social game that and like all of these games, and his is in a very like colonized worldview, like white supremacist worldview. And so like a lot of his examples are like a dog eat dog kind of world. And like I think there's spaces with neurotypical people that aren't always that intensely that way, but it gave me such a great idea of like, oh, the way that I'm trying to even understand and process my level of responsibility or authenticity in this interaction, like this other person is coming in from a completely different place. And so I don't even have to worry about that. They weren't thinking about that.
Okay.
I don't have to ask the what if, like, because they weren't thinking that way. So, okay.
I don't even know how to make my brain work that way.
I know.
To like not ask or the like the why. Like that's the question that I ask a lot is why. It's like somebody's telling me how they are and I'm like, but
that
why?
Is so neurodivergent. Like I think that is it feels like a pathway to me, right? Like it's just these like stepping stones. It's just like why? And then why? And then why? And then why? And you get to this on this amazing adventure that you notice what's happening. And neurotypical people do not do that. Like maybe scientists who are neurotypical, but most people don't.
Well, my best friend.
They speak in associations instead of in whys.
That's so dumb.
Like they're not speaking in content. They're speaking in like these social layers of association and games.
Yeah.
Like they're not talking about the content
Yeah.
usually,
You're so,
which is
the
just
games
mind blowing
thing,
to
the
me.
fucking social
Yeah,
games thing,
I know.
like, I can't even handle it. I
I
can't
know.
even handle it. But so my best friend recently told me, we've been best friends for like almost 10 years. And just in this last year, she told me that, she said, you are the only person I've ever met in my life who asks me these like lines of very personal questions. And you're doing it because you genuinely care and you really want to know me.
Mm-hmm.
You're the only person I've ever had that experience with. And I was like, well, like, has no one else ever asked you personal questions? And she's like, oh no, they have. But my experience with them is that they're asking me personal questions to find out information about me that they're then going to use against me later.
Wow.
And you're the only person I know who's ever come from a genuine, caring, safe place of just wanting to know me better and wanting to understand me. And I'm like, that is all I want, is to know you better and understand you.
Right.
Like it has never occurred to me to use this information against you in some way.
Yeah.
You know? And like, that just makes me so sad that people do that.
It, to me, like our way of seeing and being in that sense, especially, is like medicine for the world. Right. And just being ourselves is being that medicine.
Yeah. And if they let us be ourselves, it's medicine to us too.
Right.
But whenever they think that there's some ulterior motive happening that I don't understand, I'm like, what do you mean I'm going to use it against you? How? In what way? Right. And of course, she has a laundry list of things she can rattle off for how I might, because that's her past experience, which is totally valid. Right. Like my greatest wound is abandonment. Her greatest wound is betrayal.
Yeah.
So it's like in our relationship, when I get triggered, it's because I'm worried I'm going to lose her. And when she gets triggered with me, it's because she doesn't know if she can trust me.
Right.
But both of us have had enough emotionally corrective experiences with each other that I actually told my friend this a few months ago. I was like, look, we've both had enough emotionally corrective experiences that I would really like to get to the place in our friendship where when something goes off or when something is wrong or when there's a rupture, that I choose to trust in all the experiences that I've had of you before, where we had a conflict and successfully repaired it and you didn't abandon me.
Right.
And so my brain doesn't immediately jump to that. And I would love it if you could get to a point where you could trust all the emotionally corrective experiences you've had with me, being a trustworthy person and not betraying you, so that you don't automatically jump to that. And she was like, yeah, that sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Like, that's really just what I want.
Yep.
So,
someone just sent me a meme that was like a little girl in front of a like thing of a nervous system, and it was like, I really want that, but I know I can't have it, or I don't know how to get it, or whatever, you know. I just want the regulated nervous system.
I think I've seen that. Is she a little girl that's like, wish I could have it?
Yep, exactly. That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that one. I love that one.
Yep. Okay, I'm curious if there's anything coming up for you. I have another question I can go to, or if there's like a channel you want to go down. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, so this may have been like a little while ago, but how the like pole dancing and like living into your body, like how that's been for you. It seems like you're in like moving to a new chapter where that's just part of who you are now, right?
Yeah.
But there was like this time when you were shifting into that. And I'm curious how that's changed you or enhanced or like empowered you, or what that's like.
Oh gosh. All of it. Like, yeah, all of it. So I'm about to sign up for my 3rd year of online sensual movement school.
Wonderful.
Shout out to my teacher, Lux ATL, and the School of Stripcraft. If anybody wants to check that out, that's where I'm learning.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that first and foremost, it's just been so healing because I grew up in evangelicalism. I was indoctrinated with purity culture. I signed a True Love Waits pledge when I was like freaking 12. Like nobody even explained to me what sex was, but I was promising not to have it before I was married. Right.
I'm going to be the good girl. Yes.
Oh, I was such a good girl. So I was raised with the like True Love Waits, purity culture, purity ring, I kiss dating goodbye. Like modesty, modest is hottest. Like that's what I was raised with. Right. And so it really messed with my relationship with my body on many different levels, and including what I would say that this is like psychological abuse, like, being taught to memorize scriptures. Like, I can't remember where in Jeremiah it says this, but it's like the heart is wicked above all things.
Oh gosh, yes.
And so it's like memorizing stuff like that from a very early age really taught me that I should not trust my own heart, and I should not trust my body, because the desires of the flesh are wicked. And like all of those scriptures are really used to like control and manipulate people.
Absolutely.
Into fitting into the box.
Right.
And so sensual movement has been one of many different ways that I have learned how to get back into my body and to trust the flow of movement in my body. And if I'm doing it in the privacy of my own home, then it's safe, and I'm not trying to get anyone to look at me. Although when I post it on the internet, I'm definitely trying to get people to look at me. Like, but even that, right? Even the, like, I want people to look at me isn't an allowed desire in evangelical Christianity.
Right.
Because you're supposed to always point people to God, and they're supposed to see God in you, right? Heaven forbid they see you. Right. Heaven forbid. So it's one facet of expression of my authentic self. Right. And like, I tell people that authenticity is like a diamond with many facets. You're never just going to be one thing, because it wants to express itself in so many different ways. So it's like, I am authentically expressing myself now, but later this afternoon, I'm going to authentically express myself around this pole. And then later today, I'm going to authentically express myself in a conversation with my husband. And it's like, it can show up in so many different ways. And it's not, authenticity is not about what you're doing. Right. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. Any of the what's can be a facet of anyone's authentic expression. It's what's the energy you're in when you're doing that thing? How are you doing that thing? Are you trusting yourself in doing that thing? Are you following the desires of your heart? Are you following what's naturally resonating with you? Or are you doing it because you think it's what you should do? Right. Or because it's what you're supposed to do? Or like, so yeah, sensual movement, like I've never felt so much flow in my body before. Because it's not rigid. There's when it comes to pole, there are
like you're moving out of a held freeze response in your body.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not, like ballet. I used to do ballet, and in ballet, ballet is beautiful and ballet can flow, but you have to be really good at ballet before it flows. Right. You got a lot of ballet classes under your belt before ballet really flows.
Right.
And I feel like sensual movement is different in that, one, it's not as technically challenging. So there's not as much there is technique, but it's not as much as ballet. And of course, with pole, there is a right and a wrong way to do things. So there is some technique there too.
But it's more about listening to yourself. It sounds like there's a lot of space to do that.
Yeah. It's more about listening to yourself. And it's more about like, would it feel really good to move my hips right now? Or would it feel really good to move my shoulders right now? Or do I want to just crawl around on the floor or, whatever. And this might surprise people. I do sensual movement and pole all the time. And I never do it for my husband. It's not like a thing we do before we're intimate. You know what I mean? I'm not like, hey, let me come down here and I'll give you a lap dance. Right. It's a thing I do for myself.
Yep.
And then the fantasy part is when I'm out with friends, and let's say we're at like a bar or something, and there's music or there's dancing. Like, guess who can bust a fucking move and looks like amazing, right? Like, so it fulfills that fantasy as well of like, I want to be able to just bust into some like freaking awesome dance and everybody be like, whoa.
It's about you as a sensual, sexual, whole person.
Yes.
Not like the male gaze.
Yes. Yes. And also, if I want the male gaze, it's okay.
You can get it. Yes.
I can have it. but I don't need it. And it
Right.
doesn't validate who I am. And it's not my
Right.
reason
It's
for
not
doing it.
behaviors for them. It's coming from you.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you can be seen in it.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
boy, when I post a sensual movement video on my Instagram, people
yeah.
get their panties in such a twist.
Uh-huh. I remember you having a response to it on Instagram. Like there was one thing that was really hurtful, like a while back, you know, and
Was
like
it when I got called cringe like a baby giraffe?
maybe
Was
I
it
don't
that
remember.
one?
I wasn't ever aware of what the thing was that happened. I just know it was painful, and I was like, oh, I totally feel that. Like
Yeah.
it felt so resonant and similar to me, right?
Yeah.
Of like,
Yeah.
it's what it's like to show up
I had someone
authentically.
tell me I looked sexually awkward and cringe like a baby giraffe learning to stand. But no, what was so crazy after that is that my loyal followers and the people in my membership, we took that and we adopted the baby giraffe as like our mascot. So then now it's like when somebody's in the beginning stages of learning something new, it's
That's
like,
great.
oh, you're in your baby giraffe phase. Cause like freaking baby giraffes are cute.
Yes, they
Like,
are.
if you're going to insult me, do better because baby giraffes are cute. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, I love sensual movement. I love pole. I cannot wait to be stronger so that I can like do more inversions or like hold on. But right now I kind of just dance around the pole. I don't really dance on the pole. But I still love it so much. And I feel like it gives me a lot of flexibility. There's the ability to improv a lot. And so I can just do movements that I'm comfortable with and that I know really well. Yeah, I honestly can't say anything like negative, any kind of negative impact that it's had on my life at all.
Yeah.
And when the 1,000, I might lose 1,000 people in a day if I post a sensual movement video. And I'm just like, whoo, man, I'm glad I've got that filter in place to get those people out of there. Like that's how I see it.
Yep. It's like the shedding process in a sense, right?
Yeah. And it's like, if you can't welcome and celebrate all of me, then don't be here. Just don't be here.
Yep. I know. I'm the same way. I'm like, take it or leave it, but don't criticize.
There you go. I tell people, I made posts about this. I've even said it in the comments, like, I do understand that a lot of my content, even outside of sensual movement, I understand that a lot of my content makes people very uncomfortable. I don't know if this is the case for all autistic people, but my flavor of autism is I am direct as fuck. And so I just speak directly into whatever. Right. And I'm like, we don't have time for all this like flowery bullshit talking around this language. Let's just go straight into it, which I get can be really triggering and uncomfortable for people. So I tell them like, your discomfort is welcome in my social media space. I totally expect that I'm going to make you uncomfortable. Your discomfort is welcome. Your projections on me are not.
Right. Yes.
And there's a difference. You can be in your discomfort without making me bad.
Right. Yep.
Or without making me an attention whore, or without making me a slut, or whatever it is that they're making me. I'm like, no, I'm not that thing. You're just uncomfortable. And that's okay that you're uncomfortable.
Right.
Just don't project it onto me like it's my fault.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Thanks.
I feel like that's good energetic and relational hygiene in a sense. I don't know that I love the word hygiene, but like it feels like a helpful way to be, a helpful ritual, a helpful like cleanse in a sense, right? Of like, this is all I'm allowing in my space, like helpful boundaries and helpful.
Yeah. I regularly, so to get into the witchy aspect of things, I regularly have a boundaries ritual / spell that I do where I make a circle on the floor, and I usually alternate like crystal, candle, crystal, candle, crystal. So I make a circle of fire and rock essentially. And then I get inside of the circle and I define it. And I say like, this is my space. This is my energy. And I say, here's what's welcome in this space. Here's who is welcome in this space. And then I start to ask myself, what's in this space, or who's in this space, or what energy is in this space that I need to get out of this space. And so that's when I'll start like bringing my body online and visualizing like, if there's an energy in my space that I don't want in that circle of fire and rock, then I say like, I like push it out of my space with my hands.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sending you to the outside of this. And why did I choose fire and rock? Because to me, those represent two things that are like really difficult to penetrate.
Yes.
You know, like rock is hard to get through, fire is hard to get through. So sometimes I'll write down like names or energies or something on a piece of paper and then physically set it outside the circle.
Yeah,
I'm really big into like physical representation of what I'm trying to do.
Right.
So, but that's a ritual that I have to do pretty regularly. And I will write down on a piece of paper like the internet's projections, you know, and like set that outside. And it's not to get rid of them. It's more of a reminder for me about like I don't actually have to allow this in my energetic space.
Yep.
So I do like the term energetic hygiene in that context.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, both for sensual movement and for like your own sense of like witchiness and rituals and what gives you life. Like, where have you learned from? If you want to like email them to me, or if you want to tell me, or like, I would just love to be able to share those as well with people, like things that have really helped you.
Yeah. So, someone I really do like, and I don't follow her on social media, but I've done 2 of her offerings. Her name is Rachel Maddox.
Okay. I've heard her name.
RachelMaddox. So Rachel Maddox is really great. If you don't follow her on Instagram, at least sign up for her emails. Like that woman can write an email that makes me want to sit down and read it like a book. Like
that's amazing.
Her language, the like everything about her emails. I don't even do everything she offers, but I read every email and I'm just like, man, I wish I could write like this. Like it just like drips like honey out of her mouth and it makes you want, it like lures you in. And I just freaking love it. So Rachel Maddox is awesome. My teacher is Kirby Criddle. Kirby and I discovered this last spring, whenever I went and visited her, I did a solo retreat, with her, and we discovered that we share a past life connection, and an Isis lineage. So the goddess Isis. And so I've been getting a lot into, just like the cult of Isis. And I don't mean cult, like,
right. Yeah. No,
you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, even if you watch like documentaries about people doing archaeological digs in ancient Egypt, like they called the body of people or the building that worshiped a particular god or goddess, they called it like the cult of Isis, the cult of Hathor, the cult of Sekhmet, right? So just looking more into like the cult of Isis stuff and looking at that lineage and like anchoring myself into that lineage.
That's cool.
So there's that. And then honestly, a lot of it is just intuitive. A lot of it, like my boundary circle thing was totally an intuitive thing that I just was like, this feels right. So I just went
love that so much.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mix of different places, things, people.
Yeah. Are there any other places that you are finding a lot of resonance or like receiving a lot or finding a lot of space for expression? Like what feels like has a lot of resonance for you right now?
In terms of authenticity or just anything?
Anything.
So what has a lot of resonance for me right now is I really want to train and become a holistic pelvic care practitioner.
So cool.
And my teacher Kirby is a holistic pelvic care practitioner and she has agreed to teach me. So as of right now, I am learning female pelvic anatomy. Like all the names of the different nerves and all the names of the vessels and arteries and veins and where they connect and where they drain. And that's what I'm learning right now is female pelvic anatomy. What else is resonating for me right now? I mean, it's winter and it's like 2 degrees where I live right now. So I'm kind of in a season of like, I don't really have to produce a lot right now. I don't really have to, like, it feels like a time to study. It feels like a time to not necessarily be in the active creative process, but sort of like letting the creative process build some juice before it starts
Yeah.
coming out again, if that makes sense.
I love that.
So yeah, that's resonating. And then what else? I mean, I'm doing a lot of couples work right now. So like at the forefront of my mind all the time is like some couple that I'm working with.
Right.
But I
Absolutely.
love it. I love couples work. I mean, I love my one-on-ones too, but I'll tell you, Catherine, what I love the most about couples work. And it's
Good,
that
because I
when
was about
both,
to ask.
yeah, when
Yes.
both of them are together,
Uh-huh.
there's no bullshit. Like if one of them tells me something that's not totally accurate or like it didn't happen that way, the other one will be like, no, that's not how that happened. Here's how that happened. And
Yeah.
so, whereas in a one-on-one session, that
Mhm.
sandpaper isn't there.
Right.
Right. I'm calling it sandpaper because it's like a
Right.
rough
I totally
edge.
get
It's like
that.
when somebody's like avoiding something or they're in
Yep.
their shadow about it or whatever,
Yep.
it's like their partner provides the sandpaper that's like, nah, we're going to smooth this out.
Yep.
So I've really been loving couples work because it's
You can get to the root of it,
so
the
much
really deep
faster,
stuff.
so
That's
much
so great.
faster. And like couples tend to have one main cycle that they get into, but it just shows up in all these different contexts, but it's still the same cycle,
Yeah.
you know? And so helping them identify their cycle and then identify different contexts and situations where that cycle comes up, and then giving them tools to be like, hey, we're in our cycle again. How about we not do this? How about we try something else? Right.
Yeah.
Like giving them that language for that,
Yep.
helping them learn how to be active listeners. Like I bring in a lot of nonviolent communication into my couples work.
Yeah.
And you know, I market my couples coaching program as a couples communication intensive. That's how I market it because I'm a Gemini sun. Mercury is in my house of communication, whatever house that is, third house, second house, something like that. I am a natural communicator. Like I articulate myself really well. I find my words easily. I usually don't have a hard time like speaking, and I have a knack for taking really complex things and distilling them down into something that's very like able to be metabolized.
Right.
And so whenever I marketed this couples coaching thing, I was like, I'm going to teach you guys how to communicate better. Like you probably want the same thing, but you don't know how to communicate that you both want the same thing.
Right.
So I marketed as that. Well, my teacher, Kirby, says that my work has a very gotcha bitch energy because she's like, you're like getting the men under the pretense of I'm going to teach you how to communicate better. But then they get in there and we're doing all this somatic work. We're doing all of this like nervous system regulation. We're doing all of this like, what's the voice in your head saying about this? What's your story here? Are you plastering your mom's face on your partner's head? Like we're doing all of that. And they're just like, I just thought we were going to come learn how to talk to each other better. And I'm like, gotcha, bitch, you know? Like I am delivering what I said I would deliver.
Right. I'm giving you what you need.
Yeah.
But it's not what you thought you needed.
Right.
Or what you thought you signed up for.
Yeah. Yeah. Because all of this somatic and nervous system stuff that's going on for each of you individually is determining how you're communicating.
Yep.
Right. So it's not just about finding different words or using better words. It's really about like going back into your body and going back in time and being like, wow, isn't it interesting that this was my experience in childhood? And here's how that shows up in communicating with my partner today. You know? So yeah, it's kind of gotcha, bitch. Like, haha, I got you into this thinking that you were just going to learn how to communicate, but actually we're going to heal both of your trauma.
Yep.
So, yeah, but I love it. I really do love it. I'm kind of considering like maybe just doing couples coaching.
Well, it sounds like for right now, like that's definitely the calling right now.
It's so good. It's so good. And both times I've opened it up, I've said I have space for 4 people and I end up with 7 or 8. And it's like, wow. I mean, my schedule has been packed since mid-October. Like wonderful. I'm literally like I'm turning people away because it's so packed with couples. So yeah, I would like for my next phase of couples coaching, I really want my husband to join so we can do like couple on couple. work. I think that would be really powerful too. I think
Yep.
my husband has some imposter syndrome or something to
Mhm,
work out
mhm.
first, but I
Yeah.
trust that he'll get it whenever he's ready.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. But I
Yeah.
really do love couples work. And like relationship is such a huge part of authenticity, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's okay. If you're neurodivergent, I understand that you may have the experience of even when I'm completely by myself at home, what if I'm being watched? I have that anyway.
Mhm.
So I get that to a certain degree, maybe some people feel like, well, I can't even be my authentic self when I'm by myself because I always have
Mhm.
this feeling that somebody's watching me, right?
Right. Right.
But actually, like let's not park our power there. If you're by yourself, it's not hard to be your authentic self. Not
Right.
really.
Right.
But where it really matters for you to be your authentic self and where it's really hard is in relationships.
Yeah.
Because that's where you had to abandon your authenticity in order to retain the relationship to begin with.
Yeah.
Right. So if I believe that the whole point of all of this is so we can embody our authenticity with more ease
Mhm.
and be true
Mhm.
to ourselves and not abandon ourselves, well, that doesn't really mean a whole lot unless you're doing it in relationship,
Right.
unless you're doing it in community, because that's where you're going to get bumped up against and people are going to push back or say you're too much, or whatever else. And it's
Mhm.
like, that's where the test really is like, am I embodied in my authentic self really? Or am I just saying that I am? But actually, as soon as I get around other people, that all goes out the window and I go right back into my old stories or patterns or whatever. So
Mhm.
I think the couples coaching for me really supports authenticity in relationship, which is ultimately like
Mhm.
what is the most important thing to me.
Right.
Um, and you know what my dream is though? My
Mm.
dream, Catherine, is I want to do couples coaching, but not necessarily romantic couples. Like
Mhm.
I would love to coach a mother and a daughter who want to heal their relationship together.
Oh, well, I will send people to you
Oh my God, I want that
because
so
I've
much.
I've had multiple people reach out to me who are evangelicals and want to have like family therapy with their parents. And I'm like, that is too close to home for me, but it might be just right up your alley.
I would love to work with a mother and a daughter, mother, son, father, daughter who want to heal their
Mhm.
relationship. I would also love to work with like maybe best friends who are trying to work on something in
Mhm.
their relationship.
Mhm.
Like I think that we put
I love that.
relational work too much in a box when we
Yes.
say only
Right.
couples coaching,
Yep.
right? And it's
Yep.
like, well, what if my couple is actually really good, but my relationship
Mhm.
with my mom is shit?
Right.
Like where do I go then?
Right.
So my dream is like I would really love to coach like parents and children, adult children
Yeah.
who are trying to
Right.
figure out their relationship, right?
I
Like
love that.
the boomer parents who are like, well, I did the best I could, you
Right.
know? Like I want to work with them and I want to be like, you're right, you did the best you could. And also listen
Right.
to your child,
Right. Yes.
right? Take
Yes.
some responsibility here. So, yeah, I just think that that partnered work, no matter who it is, that partnered work is so
Mhm.
powerful.
Yes.
So
That's
send them my
amazing.
way. I want
I
them.
will. I will. I'm
And
so
I
glad you're
also
doing
think,
that.
like, let's be honest, I don't have a great relationship with my mom. So it
Yeah,
probably is like a part of me that's like, I
absolutely.
want to see what's possible, even if I never get it myself, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I don't know if I'd say most, but a lot, if not most, of our healing work that we're doing in the world comes out of our own pain,
Mhm.
right? Like there's some theme
For
or
sure.
some resonance there,
Yeah,
right?
for
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. So then that brings up the question of like, well, if my relationship with my mom isn't healed, am I qualified to work with mothers and
Absolutely, you
daughters?
are.
Right. It brings that up. But
Yes.
like, that's an easy one for me to be like,
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
qualified. I totally
Hmm.
am.
Hmm.
But I just think that like that relational work is really, that feels much more authentic to me than just like the one-on-one work because
Hmm.
I've worked with
Hmm.
so many individual clients who they don't have friends. They don't have
Hmm.
relationships with their parents
Right.
and their
Right.
families. They're kind of healing alone
Right.
and they stay stuck a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting because for me, that is my sweet spot because there's something about my empathy, maybe clairsentience, like that, like I can totally resonate and see their interior world as they're sharing it with me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I basically live in my interior world. And so that always feels like the best place for me. And like people that are wanting and needing to do work on their interior world, that isn't harmonious yet.
Yeah.
No. And so, but then after that, you need the relationship work.
Yeah.
Or maybe simultaneously, so you have enough
Yeah.
space to do that work. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think it's different attunements, maybe
Yeah.
in some ways, like
Yeah.
resonance.
So,
Yeah.
like in my human design, are you familiar with human
Mhm.
design?
Oh, I want to understand it, but I do not
I don't
like get
understand it.
it.
I understand mine, but I
Okay.
don't understand it. I even have the like textbook of human design. I
Uh-huh.
tried to
Yeah.
read it and I was
Right.
like, this is way too over my head.
Yeah.
Like I can understand female pelvic anatomy, but I cannot understand this.
Yes.
But I know enough about my own human design to get by. So
Mhm.
I'm a 1-3 emotional projector.
Okay.
And you know, in the body graph where there's all those
Mhm.
shapes and then they have
Mhm.
numbers in the shapes. And then
Mhm.
sometimes the numbers, two numbers connect sometimes. And then
Mhm.
sometimes the line stops halfway between the numbers. So when the two numbers are connected, that's called a complete channel, right?
Mhm.
I have one complete channel in my entire human design chart. Only
Wow.
two numbers meet
Mhm.
one time, and it's the 3740 gate, which is the channel of tribal spirituality. So
Wow.
my purpose for in human design is literally to create like spiritual community.
I
So I
love that
think
so
that's
much.
why the relationship thing
Yes.
tracks so
Right.
much for me.
Yep. Yep. Where like
Um,
for me, I've tried doing that and it just doesn't ever quite take. It doesn't ever quite work. I don't have enough read on it. And so like
yeah,
I'm always so happy to find people that like that is their sweet spot. You
yeah,
know?
that's my
Because I'm
sweet
like,
spot.
yes.
It's my
Uh-huh.
sweet
I love
spot.
that
And
so
I feel
much.
like I can just watch a couple talk to each other and I can be like, "Oh, I get it, you guys. I see
That's
it."
so great.
You know, because
That's
it's like
so
I just
great.
have this outside perspective that they don't have because they're in it
Uh-huh.
and I'm
Yep.
not in it.
Yep.
So, yeah, it just and also like my healthy ego really likes that I can do that. My healthy ego is like, "Damn, I'm badass."
Well, and I think there's like such a lovely synergy when you're in that place of your like
Genius?
passions and genius.
Yeah.
Yes, right? That like you are really helping them and
Yeah.
you're feeling really good about that and they're feeling really good about that. And so there's this like
Yeah. Great
amazing
energy.
synergy there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I love it. So I think that's why the couples work is lighting me up so much more than the
So
one-on-one
great.
work because it
Yes.
lets me see that dynamic so much more clearly. Because right, when you're working with an individual, you're only getting their perspective of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
never getting the perspective of the people they're in relationship with.
Yep.
So they're telling you about their boyfriend, or they're telling you about their mom, or they're telling you about whoever, and you're getting their perspective. And of course, you can
Mm-hmm.
validate and be like, wow,
Right.
that's really hard. That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But when you have two people giving perspective about each other and their relationship, I just feel like it gives you such a more complete picture of what's
Yeah.
going on.
Uh-huh.
And I think I'm learning that part of being autistic means that I'm really sensitive to noticing patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see two people interact enough, I start seeing patterns in their relationship. And that's
Yeah.
something I don't get with an individual.
Right. And it sounds like that's part of your genius
I think
and that you were
so.
really missing out on before.
I think
Yeah.
so. And any
Uh-huh.
of my
Yeah.
one-on-one clients who are listening, like, I still love you.
Right. Yes. Right.
You're like, I love
Yes.
you and I love working with you.
Right.
Yeah. It's just if you
Yeah.
could
And
bring
this
your
is
mom,
lighting you
if you
up
could
a
just bring
certain
your mom
way.
to your next
Yes.
session, that'd be great.
I know. So funny.
Right. It does light me up. You're so right.
Yeah.
I haven't actually gotten to talk about my couples work to this level to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm
I'm
kind
so
of surprising
glad.
myself about how intensely fired up about it I'm getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to observe myself in a moment of passion about something.
It's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if there's anything else you want to touch on as like time's getting close to the time we need to wrap up, like how that's going for you.
I don't
I
know.
think if
I
there's anything
really,
else that I wanted to touch on.
yeah, I don't know what else to talk about. I don't have any coaching spots open at the moment. I have a workshop happening in 2 days, but I don't think this episode's going to come out before then.
No.
So probably like the best thing that I could talk about is at some point, probably spring of this year. I'm going to open up another cohort of my group program, Feel Without Fear.
Great.
And so if people want to check that out, they can check it out. They can get on the wait list. So it's just lindseylockett.com/, like FWF, which is Feel Without Fear, FWF waitlist.
Okay.
And yeah, they can go to my website, read all about that. It's my like signature group program. I call it my magnum opus. It's kind of like, it's a group coaching program, but it's so much more than that. And to go along with my human design and building spiritual community, like what has come out of Feel Without Fear that has been the most surprising thing to me is that I have a membership on the other side of it. So only people who've been through that experience are part of the membership. And like the spiritual community that we're creating in that space is so insanely good.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. And like, it's so insanely good that I don't even have to be 100% present 100% of the time because they're so good at supporting each other.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the thing that I really want to put a lot of my focus and energy into is like building that community and really nurturing that community. So, we meet 2 or 3 times a month. We have different topics for calls. Sometimes I bring guests in to teach or do a practice or something like that, but we're hanging out on Boxer together, like pretty much every day. Even when I take days off and I tell them like, hey guys, I'm not going to be here for a week or whatever, like I'll still come back a week later and they've had all this beautiful conversation with each other and I'm not even there. When it feels so nice that like my constant presence isn't what's fueling that. It's like they're all co-creating that space with me, which feels really, really good.
Yeah.
And yeah. And it gives us another place to have that relational healing because we are actually forming relationships with each other. Even though they're online, it's still deeper than just like leaving a comment in someone's comment section, you know?
Right.
So
that's amazing.
I would say join the Feel Without Fear waitlist. I'll email you when it's open. It's a freaking fantastic program. It took me like almost 2 years to create. And you go through it as a cohort. So like everybody who signs up, they all go through it together and new people don't come along during the process. Like it's open. Once it's full, it closes and then we go. So over the course of it, you see the same people week after week. You start to get to know their stories. You start to get to know their names. A lot of people, if they resonate with someone's story, they're like, hey, I want to like connect with you outside of this call. How do I do that? And then they like, I mean, my last cohort, I wasn't even part of it. And they set up a group WhatsApp so that they could just talk to each other. And I didn't even join it.
That's great.
Because I was like, you guys, I already use Voxer and Signal and text and Instagram DMs and everything else. I can't do a WhatsApp thing. But if y'all want to, please do. So yeah, Feel Without Fear. And then I am currently working on, I don't know what it's going to be called, but it's based in the Kundalini mantra. If you're familiar, Om Namo Guru Dev Namo. Are you familiar with that Kundalini mantra?
I saw one of your posts with it, but I don't know what it means. I'm not familiar with it.
So the translation is, I bow down to the divine wisdom of all that is. I bow down to the divine teacher within. Or it could be, I surrender to the divine wisdom of all that is. I surrender to the divine wisdom within. But it's like in approaching my like spiritual journey, my health journey, like a lot of different aspects of my journey, I've tried to do it from a place of, you know, oh, I just need to be disciplined, right? I need to have discipline to show up and do this practice. I need to have discipline to eat these foods. I need to have discipline to do this movement thing or whatever. And Catherine, I'm just in a place in my life right now. I'm sure that I will have to go heal this relationship with discipline at some point. But right now where I'm at with discipline is, it is a big fuck no.
Yep.
Like,
I totally get that.
I am like no to discipline. And it's not because I want to like be lazy and fuck off. It's
No, it's
because
because you've been over-managed and over-controlled so much of your life, and our society values that so much more than
Yes.
pleasure and rest and
Yes.
presence.
Yes. Thank you. You get it.
Totally get
So
it.
what I'm playing with right now is taking these things that are really supportive of me and of my well-being, and instead of doing them through the lens of discipline, doing it through a lens of devotion.
Yeah, I love that.
And like I do physical therapy because I'm hypermobile. Like,
Mhm.
so I don't like physical therapy. I don't want to do it. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's tedious. I don't like
Mhm.
it. But when I like roll my yoga mat out and get my foam roller out and my therapy balls, and then I light some incense and I like do the incense over those items, and then I pray that those items are going to be used in support of healing my body, and then my body can be used to heal the world and like all of that. And then I turn some juicy spiritual music on and I dim the lights and I light a candle, and then I do physical therapy. Now it's a ritual.
I love that. Yes.
Right? Like I just took something like, oh, you got to be disciplined and have a routine.
Right. Yep.
And I just turned it into a devotional ritual.
Yep.
That makes me want to do it.
Right.
And when it's discipline and for me, a lot of times it's like we have to be disciplined to do this thing because we want a result.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's right. That's like success orientation versus like wisdom orientation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not results orientation, right? It's like I'm doing this ritual, whether or not this physical therapy fixes the pain in my body. That's not the point. The point is that I created this ritual. I like intentionally spoke an intention over it. And now I'm doing it without a timer going. It's not something I'm going to check off my to-do list. Like, oh, good, I did physical therapy today, right? If I don't have the desire for that ritual that day, then I just ask myself like, okay, the desire is not there, but is the devotion still there? And can I do it from a space of devotion even without desire? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. But I'm wanting to turn that into a bigger thing that I go on a journey with women to have a similar experience where we are literally like so trusting of our body that it is the divine teacher within, and that we bow down to it. And like, we don't submit to the body from a place of fear because we're going to get in trouble. We're not submitting to the body because we have to. We're not submitting to the body to get a result. We're saying, body, your wisdom is so much greater than my wisdom, that I trust you so much that submitting to you feels like the most loving thing I can do for myself. Right? It totally flips our stories about like submission on its head.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's going to become, but that's what I'm working on.
Yeah. It sounds like that's like a seed that will come to fruition at some point. But like, yeah, it's building.
I have an ongoing notes app on my phone. Every time something new comes in, I just type a new thing in, and I'm just waiting for, the way my creative process works is it kind of drips in a little bit at a time. It might take months, drips in. Eventually I'll look at that notes app and be like, oh, and like a wave of like, now it's time, right? Like it comes over me, and then I'll just like hole myself up in my office and just create. And like, I mean, it took me 2 years to create Feel Without Fear, but the active creation process of it was literally like 3 weeks.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Because I like it dripped in enough, and then I had enough that was like, oh, I can do something with this now. And I took it and I did something with it, and I created this like magical thing that has seriously been like transformative for so many people. So I think this will be the same way. And in a lot of ways, I feel more excited about it.
Yeah. Well, it's the new thing. That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So
I can't wait to see
new for me.
all those things unfold. And everyone, make sure you go to lindseylockett.com and check it out. I just thank you so much, Lindsey, for being here. It's been so enjoyable.
Thanks, Catherine, for having me. I've loved talking to you.
Thanks so much. Thank you for being a part of our collective care and meaning making on who we are and what we need. Leave a review, subscribe, and follow us on socials at Catherine Quiring and at Who We Are Pod. This is your host, Catherine Quiring, signing off. See you again soon.